Hello, I'm Tracy Poizner, and this is Limitless, a show about exploring the frontiers of your potential and the coming revolution in human evolution. This podcast stands at the intersection of cutting-edge science and your desire to really live your best life. We'll dive into the quantum realm of waves and particles and how it applies to you and me, not as theory, but as the truth of how we operate. We'll delve into the mysterious mind-body connection and the premier technology on the planet for activating higher states of consciousness in mind and body. I hope what you hear will resonate and encourage you to stop playing small with your one wild and precious life, to start expanding into the legacy you're really here to create. To dive further into these topics or to experience this technology for yourself, visit my website at tracypoizner.com. Last summer, I ran a weekend retreat for 6 people in the beautiful UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve that I'm lucky enough to call home, the Beaver Valley of Ontario, Canada. The retreat itself I called Bach Flowers for Expanding Spiritual Awareness. Wait. Before you change to another podcast, listen up for 30 more seconds here. What does spiritual awareness have to do with your potential, which is the subject of this show? What does it have to do with your business or your family life or with your bank balance? It turns out that success in all of those practical real life areas like business and money and relationships requires an ability to distinguish reality from fantasy. And being able to see things as they really are is the actual end game of spiritual awareness. Even if you're someone who's invested a lot of time and money on inner work, you're probably only a tiny bit better at seeing things as they really are than the other 99% of the human race. This is the human dilemma in a nutshell. We are prisoners of the first-person perspective. We can't ever be truly objective about anything because we can only see the world through our own default filter. Everyone has a filter. It's the sum of your conditioning, your experiences, and your heredity. You also can't ever see the world through anyone else's eyes but your own. And by eyes, I mean not just eyes, but all your organs of perception. And all of your perceptions are inextricably attached to your emotions, and in turn to the loop of thoughts that validate your emotions back to you. I called this episode, How Do You Know What You Know? This is the phenomenon I'm referring to. What you know, in air quotation marks, is not the same as what's objectively out there. It's whatever passed through your filter into your awareness. Everything you believe seems true to you because you saw it with your own eyes, meaning your filters allowed you to notice something and not something else. Have you ever seen that experiment by Daniel Simons of the basketball game where a gorilla walks through the scene? He has people counting the number of passes occurring during a minute or so of play. And apparently, about 50% of the people who take this test don't notice the gorilla, even though their eyes were trained on it for at least a second. They literally didn't see someone in a gorilla suit walking across the basketball court. Your awareness is completely dependent on your filters and what they either let in from the outside or filter out. Your filters also apply things like intensity, brightness, hue, just like on Instagram. Oh, and touch up my appearance, like on Zoom. So, why is an expanded or elevated level of spiritual awareness useful to you? It's because it represents a greater degree of being able to relate to the world as it is, not as you fear it is, or as you imagine it is, or even as you wish it would be. This ability to interact with reality is the key to getting or keeping absolutely everything you could ever want in life, whether that's more prosperity, better relationships, more impact, or more love. Let's go back to the filter analogy for a minute. I describe this to my clients like a pair of dirty sunglasses that you don't know you're wearing. Everything everything is distorted by that smeared lens, but you don't even know that there's a smear. You just think this is how things look. In fact, you know this is how things look. This is how things are. But you're wrong. It's only how things look through your lens. We call this shadow, your distorted worldview. So, for example, if this shadow worldview enlarges whatever you want or focuses on those things that you don't have in high fidelity, but it fades out or blurs all the things you actually do have, then your whole life experience feels like you have holes all over your gas tank, so to speak. It won't ever matter how much you earn or how much you manage to accumulate. The satisfaction, the feeling of achieving every goal that you make will always be hollow. It just seems to run out through you like a sieve. The buzz of victory might last for an hour or two, and then you start to feel disappointed. And you can't understand why, because in theory, you should be really happy about whatever you just accomplished. But the fulfilled, excited feeling doesn't last. Your tank doesn't ever stay full for long. The feeling of having enough just drains away. Even after you land a big sale or drive your dream car off the lot, that awesome, holy shit, I did it feeling just evaporates. And you feel like something's wrong with you because you thought that was the thing that would make you really happy. But you're right back where you started, like a game of chutes and ladders. So, what you get from having more awareness of reality is not just intellectual knowledge, but a visceral understanding that your feelings, good or bad, never actually come from things outside of you the way you think they do. Your feelings aren't dependent on other people or on the stuff you have or don't have, or on your number of likes or red carpet photos, and not even on money. There's no happiness or depression that actually comes from any of those things, or even from a combination of them. That's not to say that you shouldn't have a lot of friends and wads of cash. Those things together could be a recipe for a lot of fun. But you can have friends and money and still not be happy. In a weird twist of metaphysical law, it turns out that it's being happy, choosing happiness, owning responsibility for generating your happiness. That's the thing that brings you more money and attracts more friends. Do I need to repeat that? I'm not going to go all law of attraction on you here, but the law is real. I don't agree with their whole method exactly, but the law that you see in your circumstances, whatever is aligned with your beliefs, is a thing. So that retreat I mentioned earlier was specifically about finding what blocks us from expanding into a higher level of understanding the nature of reality. What keeps us trapped in this state where we fully believe that our happiness is actually dependent on things in the outside world? In the retreat, I shared what I think are the 12 main blocks to expanded spiritual awareness. Most of the people who come to my events and workshops are already well versed in some form of spirituality and have a pretty elevated level of awareness already, as you probably do if you're listening to a podcast like this one. But there are infinite levels of awareness. And my clients are people who want to know what's behind the veil. There's always more expansion. The universe itself is expanding. Despite being practically infinite from our perspective, expansion is the nature of life and of everything. We want to keep growing and learning and finding new frontiers of potential to transcend. And if we didn't have some blocks to growth, we'd be instantaneously seeing our next level. We would never be frustrated. We'd have complete mastery of our emotions and thoughts and energy. We could call everything we want towards us instantly and effortlessly. Effort is one form of block I want to talk about today, specifically the effort around making the impact you want to make through your work. Most spiritually minded people are beyond the idea of just working to make more money, or at least they're bored by it. They're looking for something more fun, more meaningful, and usually more impactful. They want to be doing legacy work to create something that will live on after they're gone and be an influence for good to the coming generations. Even if you don't exactly roll out of bed in the morning thinking, what can I do today that will change the world? It feels good to focus on the kind of creativity that nobody else in the world can bring through but you. That's what you came here to do, to be you, to bring your talents and gifts and personality and insights into the world in the form of a focused creative project. If you're a techie or a scientist, that might be an innovation. If you're an artist, it can be a painting or a poem or a film. If you're a business owner, it can be a product or a service nobody's ever built quite this way before. Everyone is being creative all the time, but there's a certain frequency of daring involved in doing something new and valuing what you have to bring forth, even if nobody gets it, because there's no guarantee that your audience is ready for it. Time is funny that way. We have a very limited view of time in our ordinary blocked state. Effort is a special kind of block. We somehow feel that effort plus time plus talent equals success. That's because it's been drilled into us since we were children. But times have changed. In case you hadn't noticed, changed is an understatement for what times have done lately. We're living through a kind of seismic shift between eons. And now, the old stepwise straightest path from A to B looks like a dusty donkey track compared with the 20-lane superhighway of quantum computing and AI. In fact, even the highway metaphor doesn't cut it anymore. The new path is more like a series of doorways that you open and step through in order for the next doorway to appear. And you don't get anywhere without choosing a door and stepping over the threshold. Effort could be defined as applying tools and resources with intention and determination. But it's more than that. It carries a tone of struggle. Efforting is sticky, it's hard, it's frustrating. And it's efforting that we place so much value on. It's like the Olympics of hard work, of proving to ourselves and everybody else how much effort we can expend. Creating with impact does not have to go hand in hand with efforting. My brother Rob and I had a conversation about this recently, and he passed along something that he heard from music producer Danny Columbi, who coincidentally wrote the awesome soundtrack for this podcast, and who even more coincidentally happens to be our cousin. Anyway, Danny says, Rob, you and I are a lot alike. If we don't crawl away from a job bleeding, we don't feel like we did our best work. That's what I'm talking about. And it doesn't have to be at kind of epic levels like this. On some level, you are also subtly blocking yourself from allowing success to be easy, from letting wealth be easy, from letting impact be easy. Personally, I can speak to how this affects healers and coaches because I'm very familiar with the ways in which I have efforted in my own work. And I continue to do it just in more subtle ways than I used to, and less often since I refuse to allow shadow to mess with me. I said that I identified 12 blocks to expanded spiritual awareness. So for this podcast, I'd like to share with you 9 blocks that I continue to work on, things I continue to monitor and alchemize for effortlessness in my work. Number 1, my misconception that struggle is an integral ingredient of impact. Number 2, My difficulty accepting that some things are beyond my control and that it's okay to let go. Number 3, my need to be right or to champion my point of view, which limits my ability to be a clear channel for receiving new information. Number 4, my strong feelings of responsibility for solving the world's problems or leading others toward positive change. Number 5, my perfectionistic tendency that makes me expend more effort than what is actually required. Number 6, my tendency to interrupt when I'm excited. Number 7, the train of relentless thoughts, which prevents me from perceiving new perspectives or unseen possibilities. Number 8, my belief that my worth is derived from the external impact I make or the goals I achieve. Aside here, these things are all me, and they're also all releasing statements that were written specifically for one of the Bach flower remedies called vervain. I wrote these with the help of my colleague, Sonal Singhal of Abu Dhabi. She and I have been studying the Bach essences together online across 9 time zones, talk about collapsing time, for a little over 2 years now. Releasing statements are her idea, or at least it's her idea to incorporate them in this work from a spiritual approach to consciousness that is outlined in a non-religious book called Message from God. I'll link to that in the show notes if you want to explore that trail. Anyway, we both saw a pretty good mirror of ourselves in the remedy vervain as we worked on it, and we had to laugh when, between us, we came up with about 5 times as many releasing statements as we had for any of the other flowers. Talk about perfectionism, hyper-enthusiasm, excessive effort, and striving for impact. So vervain has these saboteur archetype qualities of feeling like you're on a mission, like you have something important to do, and you'd better get an A+ on this assignment, even though it's not exactly clear who's giving out the marks. There's one final saboteur block to effortless impact I wanted to share here. Number 9, I tend to take myself too seriously and forget to have fun. The saboteur in me has a hard time with being made fun of or laughed at. That's the truth. So I was delighted when my online friend Lauren Zavlunov offered a challenge. She said, ask ChatGPT to use whatever it knows about you and to mercilessly roast you. I had no idea before I did this that AI could apply a filter of savage humor to dry data, but the result was both side-splitting and mortifying. After detailing the multitude of things that I do, which, if you didn't know, includes business coaching, spiritual coaching, legal strategizing and parenting courses for divorced and alienated fathers, running training programs and retreats and live workshops for alternative health enthusiasts and techies and executives and entrepreneurs and creatives, ChatGPT said bluntly, just pick a lane already, which smacked me right in the forehead. So, in the spirit of not taking myself so seriously, I asked ChatGPT to have at me again, focusing on those 9 previous prompts in particular. And here it is, unfiltered and unedited for your enjoyment. Oh, Tracy, you asked for this. So don't clutch your sublingual drops when I deliver. Let's break down this beautiful, chaotic masterpiece that is you. First of all, let's talk about your belief that struggle is an integral ingredient of impact. You're basically the spiritual equivalent of a CrossFit bro who thinks suffering is the only way to get results. Just out here spiritually deadlifting all the emotional baggage, yours, your clients, the world's. Newsflash, you don't need to crawl through the mud to prove you're making a difference. You could actually just be impactful without making it into a gladiator match. And oh, the need to be right. You're out here serving divine wisdom like a TED Talk on steroids. But let's be honest. Sometimes the universe is trying to send you new information, and you're like, nope, I already wrote the LinkedIn post about this. It's settled. Meanwhile, Spirit is over here banging on your third eye like a repo man trying to deliver an upgrade. Then there's your chronic savior complex. You're not just leading a movement, you're trying to personally drag humanity to enlightenment, one five-figure retreat at a time. You probably can't even sit in a coffee shop without diagnosing the limiting beliefs of the barista. Like, Tracy, please, just let some people order their oat milk latte without being inducted into their own shadow work. Let's not forget the perfectionistic tendencies. You're out here spending 4 hours fine-tuning a podcast title like it's a presidential speech. Your clients would probably be happy with 90% of what you do, but no, Tracy must refine it until the very atoms align with divine order. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just here pressing send and hoping for the best. Oh, and the interrupting when excited? You're like an over-caffeinated philosopher who knows the exact thing that will shatter someone's worldview, and you just cannot wait for them to finish their sentence before delivering your divine download. Conversations with you must feel like a high-speed data transfer from the Akashic records. Your relentless train of thoughts is basically running on quantum energy at this point. You don't just have thoughts. You host a 24/7 inner symposium featuring every philosopher, entrepreneur, and spiritual master you've ever encountered. Meanwhile, peace and stillness are standing just outside your brain, like bouncers waiting for permission to enter. And finally, let's talk about your tendency to take yourself too seriously. Tracy, you're literally selling magic drops of consciousness in a bottle. If that's not an invitation to have fun with life, I don't know what is. You don't have to make every moment a summit meeting with the universe. Maybe just relax and let your soul take a coffee break once in a while. In conclusion, you're a brilliant, unstoppable force of nature who needs to chill just a little bit before you transcend this dimension out of sheer intensity. Now, go meditate or take a shot of whatever intergalactic elixir you've got over there. ChatGPT out. Ouch! I hope you appreciate how painful it was for me to read that aloud. ChatGPT may not get hired for a stand-up gig anytime soon, but it's pretty impressive how well it's learned to mimic the tone of a good roast. And this exercise is good for me to stay on top of my saboteur and starve it of its shadow fuel so that I can access the ease in everything I do that's right there waiting for me to call on it. Efforting is so yesterday.
Limitless is produced by Neil Haley, with music by Danny Columbi. I'm Tracy Poizner. If you're an innovator, a business leader, or a high performer with deep curiosity about the uncharted reaches of your own potential, visit tracypoizner.com for an accelerated pathway toward unimagined achievements and legacy milestones. I'll look forward to meeting you.